What's happening, guys? Sam Adams here, and welcome back to another episode of Caffeinate today for March the 4th of 2019. My name, my friends, is Samuel Adams, and welcome to today's show. I hope that this one does find you well, and for those that are brand new to the podcast, this is a daily gaming news show where I bring you the hottest gaming news from around the industry, and I pack it up in one tight, neat little podcast for you to enjoy on weeknights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time over on twitch.tv/TheSamuelAdams. Now, of course, again, like I said, welcome, but today we have a slew of stuff to dive into because the weekend was not short of large gaming-related announcements. Now, of course, our headliner for the day is actually something that is breaking as of Monday. Apex Legends has hit 50 million players in its first month. That, if you're keeping track, is actually faster than Fortnite. On top of that, Sony is reportedly refunding PS4 players due to Anthem crashing consoles and bricking consoles in the process, which, of course, is never good PR to be dealing with on top of a relatively negative reception. Friday the 13th, the game, something that I thought was actually dying and or dead, is now coming to the Nintendo Switch. Forza developer is seemingly confirming a mobile game is on the way. Epic Games is creating a brand new map for Fortnite. However, it may or may not be something that reaches players worldwide. We'll talk about what that means. A Mexican newspaper has printed a graphic of the new Pokémon games, Sword, Shield, and Gun. That's right, they took an online joke and they printed it. I thought it would be something to go ahead and lift the spirits at the end of the show. And of course, there is a brand new mod for Resident Evil 2 that made its way around the internet over the weekend, which is that of Thomas the Tank Engine replacing Mr. X. And those, my friends, are the stories that we will talk about today. But again, welcome, and I hope you do enjoy what you have to see here tonight. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. First off, today, the PlayStation 2 was born in Japan 19 years ago. That's right, the PlayStation 2 is officially 19 years old. On March 4th, 2000, the PlayStation 2 launched in Japan. It went on to become the best-selling video game console ever. The PlayStation 2 would launch later that year in North America on October 26th, 2000, and in Europe on November 24th, 2000. Since then, over 155 million PlayStation 2s have been sold, and some of the greatest games ever were released on the console. It wasn't until 2018 that Sony finally said goodbye to PlayStation 2 in Japan. Fans on Twitter have been celebrating the PlayStation 2's launch with games they enjoyed using the hashtag PlayStation 2 or PS2 Birth Celebration. Which PS2 games were your favorites? For me, without a doubt, going back to my days growing up with classics such as Jak and Daxter and Sly Cooper. Those were two that I really did grow up on. They kind of gave me the taste that I have today. And of course, two of those companies, Sucker Punch and Insomniac? Naughty Dog. My bad. Thinking about Ratchet and Clank. We're talking about Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch, of course, going on to make stuff like Infamous, going on to make stuff like Uncharted. These games and these game development companies pretty much laid a foundation for where I am as a gamer today. And so that's something that I thought was definitely worth pointing out. But of course, as we see here, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Metal Gear Solid 3, you have so many people pointing out so many good games. Kingdom Hearts, of course, was born on the console as well. Ratchet and Clank across the board. Tons of games came out on the PlayStation 2, and I would go ahead and venture a guess that many of you watching this podcast here today grew up with the PlayStation 2. So to its console, at least to its legacy, I say happy birthday, because PlayStation 2 was without a doubt one of, if not the best gaming consoles to date. Much better, in my opinion, than even the PlayStation 4, just because of the amount of games put out for it, the variety of games put out for it, just an absolutely fantastic piece of hardware, all the way from the fat PS2 that I grew up with to the gray silver one that I have literally sitting about 3 feet from me that I was playing Tony Hawk on last week. But without a doubt, fantastic console. So happy birthday. Woo-hoo. Now moving on, yes, Apex Legends, our headline story for the day, has officially hit 50 million players in its first month, faster than Fortnite. And of course, it did take Fortnite more than 4 entire months. Apex Legends only launched 1 month ago, and I would insert here without any kind of prior marketing, and has already been played by 50 million people, according to Respawn's Vince Zampella. It's strange to think that only a handful of weeks ago, most of us had never even heard of it, and it definitely feels like it has been around for a lot longer. In that time, players have used 158 million finishers, the pretty much finishing moves whenever you have downed somebody, and 1.23 billion ultimates, placed 31 billion pings, and respawned 170 million times. And so, the astronomical numbers aren't entirely surprising though. From the moment it launched, it started drawing in a crowd. In its first day, it had 2.5 million players. That grew to 10 million players after only 72 hours, and by the end of its first week, more than 25 million people had duked it out on the island. Analyst Daniel Ahmed made some comparisons between Fortnite's initial player numbers, specifically the Battle Royale on Twitter. It took Fortnite a fortnight, to hit 10 million players, and even after 16 weeks, it didn't boast 50 million players. It's the closest comparison, and the numbers are interesting, though it is worth remembering that very different Battle Royale landscapes the games have, of course, dropped into. Battle Royales were still very new when Fortnite's BR mode appeared, and it was based on a game that people had pretty much been lukewarm on, of course, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Save the World was a confused mashup of games, which is, of course, the base version of Fortnite that was supposed to be the main game back when it first launched, and, of course, that had already started to feel dated by the time BR actually launched. And so, if you did want to dive into it, it is still 150 million players behind Fortnite, and the question I think that's on everybody's minds is, can Apex Legends actually become something that is on that same level of Fortnite? And I'm not sure that it necessarily can. And I talked about this on an earlier episode of the podcast, but essentially in my mind, Fortnite is friendly enough to a variety of players to where it welcomes in 8-year-olds, and it welcomes in 30-year-olds. It's a very, it's a very open game. It's a very welcoming game because of not only its aesthetic, the appearance of the game itself, but also the fact that you can be absolutely awful at the game and still have a relatively good time with it. I mean, that's kind of the way that I see it. And of course, this is coming from somebody who has put well over, I believe, 50 hours into Fortnite, if I remember correctly. Haven't played since probably Season 6, but again, I digress. So will the game ever actually surpass 200 million players, which of course is Fortnite's peak? Perhaps it very well could, because the game itself is very solid, and of course we talked on Friday about a new legend that is on the way. But when will that actually happen, and will Fortnite be able to continue its dominance? It very well could, because Epic Games is creating a brand new Fortnite map, but it is for Ninja Cross iKON's Samsung event. It's very confusing, so let's go ahead and dive into it. Ninja, the, of course, famous Fortnite player, says a custom Fortnite map is being made for the Samsung event coming on March the 16th. For an upcoming Samsung event showcasing the new Galaxy S10 phone, Ninja may confirm some very exciting news for Fortnite fans. During Ninja's Twitch stream, he has confirmed a custom map is in the works for the event, but it's unclear what that actually means. And so in the clip, which I'm not going to show because, hey, copyrights, essentially Ninja says there is a custom map coming for this event, and he does say a new map is coming. Is this actually a confirmation of a completely and totally new map? So the map will likely not be available to all players, they're saying over at Fortnite Intel, and it's not clear if that means a creative map is coming or if it's something else Epic Games is building exclusively for the event, or even a brand new map coming to the game. But a new map is not the only thing Ninja spoke about. There are other, including new announcements such as, emotes and whatnot related specifically to buying the S10. But the reason that I brought this into today's show, the fact that there very well could be a new map coming to Fortnite, is to highlight the fact that Fortnite is going to have to begin to innovate. And it's not something that's really been done before. It's kind of like if you're in high school or even middle school or even college, if you have somebody that's so used to getting good grades and then all of a sudden they get a D. And it's like, now you've actually got to start trying. Fortnite has been the king for well over a year, and now that there is some legitimate competition in the form of Apex Legends, the game is going to have to start to evolve and really push boundaries if it wants to maintain dominance in the BR field. Now, I've been saying for months, Fortnite is the new Minecraft. That's just how it is. It will be around for a very, very long time, so we will see what happens. But of course, Fortnite is beginning to evolve, especially with all these collaborations with Ninja and with the launch events for the Samsung Galaxy S10, which is a good-looking phone. But we'll see what happens overall in the long run. But of course, as Alan says in the chat, now that I think about it, how did Ninja become Fortnite's poster boy? The dude was a bombshell at the game, and he started killing it way early on in its life. However, let's talk more about Sony and Anthem, because Sony is reportedly refunding PS4 players due to the game crashing on consoles. PlayStation 4 owners have reported mixed results in their attempts to get refunds on digital copies of the game, but some are in fact getting refunds. Anthem's launch has not been a smooth one, and despite the day one patch, supposedly having fixed the issue of the game crashing, it appears to still be an issue for some players who are reporting that the game is shutting down consoles when it crashes, both on Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. One such thread on the subject of PS4 console crashes has seen players pipe up, claiming they've managed to get refunds on their digital copies of the game from Sony. Quote, Sony is aware of the issue and is offering a complete refund on Anthem, no questions asked. It took me 5 minutes, said Redditor u/SoundandFury87. A second commenter said they contacted Sony via its support chat and explained the game is broken on PS4, saying they didn't want to risk the game bricking their console and that it's ultimately a defective product. And they helped right away, the person says, no problem at all. Just provided some account info after that they needed, and then it was refunded, they added. Others have attempted to get a refund from Sony without any kind of success, and another user said that Sony support just advised them to stop playing the game, which is not the best response whenever you have angry customers. So there is a thread on the EA forum right now, but there is not any kind of specific update from either Electronic Arts or BioWare. But this is a bad look for Anthem, a game that is already suffering greatly from a lot of negative press surrounding its release. Of course, for those that don't know, Anthem was, and I would say still is, one of the biggest launches of the spring because it's BioWare's first game since Mass Effect Andromeda, and it's one of Electronic Arts' biggest games aside from Apex Legends right now. But without a doubt, the game is not reaching the level of expectation that so many people had because a lot of people were expecting this to be the Destiny 2 killer, and at the very most, it is on the same level of Destiny 2, if not a bit below it. But again, as I said on earlier episodes of the show, and of course on other videos as well, thinking about Apex Legends. I gotta get my Gibraltar better. But when it comes to Anthem, you really do have to kind of take a step back and realize the game is one that launched, the game is one that exists, and the game is one that is going to begin to improve over time as more and more updates do roll out. And so whenever you take that into consideration, the game has a lot of potential going forward, and it very much so is shaping up to be the same kind of situation we saw with Destiny 2, where it launched was not great in the eyes of the hardcore Destiny community. No matter how good it looked, the gameplay just simply wasn't there, and the fleshing out of the game, especially after the end game, was not where it needed to be. And so as time went on and more changes were made, you began to see Destiny 2 kind of, recreate a following in a way. And so hopefully we'll see the same kind of thing with Anthem, because as I always say, I never like to see any kind of game suffer, because a team worked very diligently on this game. Of course, BioWare was already suffering after Mass Effect Andromeda, but Anthem very well could be a huge game going into the fall season. And I've even seen some of the biggest streamers saying they're just going to take a step back and pretend like Anthem is actually launching in September and go ahead and dive in then. So we'll see what happens, but as for right now, Anthem is apparently breaking some people's PlayStation 4s and Xbox Ones, but you very well could get a refund if you do go ahead and give it a shot. However, let's talk about Friday the 13th, the game, because it's coming to the Nintendo Switch this spring, and this is an exclusive coming to us from Variety. Friday the 13th, the game, is coming to Nintendo Switch this spring with the release of Friday the 13th, the game, Ultimate Slasher Switch Edition, developer Gun Media tells Variety. The upcoming edition includes all released content and paid DLC, including every Jason Kill Pack, both Counselor Clothing Packs, and the Emote Party Pack. It does not include the Kickstarter backer exclusive Savini Jason, I have no idea who that is, I'm not a big Friday the 13th guy character, or the backer exclusive clothing pack. We are happy to be bringing Friday the 13th, the game, to the Nintendo Switch with the help of our partners at Black Tower and Nighthawk. The Nintendo Switch offers a unique experience in both social settings and on the go that we feel work very well with Friday the 13th, the game, said Daniel Nixon, Gun Media's Director of Communications. Friday the 13th was originally funded via Kickstarter and released in 2017 for the Xbox One, PS4, and the PC. Last year, developer Gun Media confirmed it would no longer be releasing new DLC content to the game due to a legal battle over the Friday the 13th franchise instigated by the original screenwriter Victor Miller. Miller is attempting to reclaim the rights to his original characters that were used in the 1980 original movie and subsequent releases. Quote, "We can't add any content whatsoever, nada, not even a new tree or a rock," said creative director Wes Keltner at the time. "We can only focus on console-dedicated servers, bug fixes, and maintenance. I know this isn't the news you wanted to hear, and I wish the situation were different, but it's the painful truth." Now, at its core, Friday the 13th is a very fun game both to play and to watch. I've given it some time myself, and I will admit that the game is simply a good time. Whenever you're thinking about stuff like Dead by Daylight, that's pretty much the idea that is existent within Friday the 13th. But of course, there is such a huge cult following for this specific horror movie that to see it getting its own game to begin with was something that was really, really cool. And I kind of followed the development as it did go on. But to see it coming to the Nintendo Switch is surprising, again, because of the fact that nothing can be added or taken away from the game at its current state. But it's also good to see because I do think that it is a game that could survive well on the Nintendo Switch. If you do have a couple of minutes to kill, the rounds for Friday the 13th are not that in-depth, and they also are very accessible for a lot of people, so it's worth diving into if you do have a Nintendo Switch and you're a fan of the horror genre. But, again, the game is coming to the Nintendo Switch this spring. No definitive release date as far as I can see, but of course I will let you guys know when it does launch on a weekly episode of The Drop, which of course is on the channel every single Sunday. Now, let's move on to some Forza news for those racing fans out there. The Forza developer has seemingly confirmed a mobile game is in existence. Video game announcements are so weirdly coordinated, secretive, and orchestrated that hints or hints of hints tend to send marketing departments into widespread sighing and denial. It's a little harder to deny, however, when the developers themselves accidentally make the announcement. In a news post from Turn 10 as part of the Forza Motorsport Week in Review, the developer tried to talk about a recent esports winner, but the wrong URL was inserted into the hyperlink. The link instead directed to a page which had info about a mobile game called Forza Street. Developed in partnership with UK-based studio Electric Square, Forza Street is built from the ground up to support a wide range of Windows 10, iOS, and Android devices, the description reads. The link has since been fixed, but it is the internet and things don't go away that simply. That said, a Forza mobile game is not a particularly huge bomb to drop, but I do imagine, the author says, there is someone out there who isn't quite happy that this got leaked so unofficially. But overall, it sounds like a good idea. Of course, for those that don't know, the mobile platforms are fantastic for racing games because of the fact that you can literally just put a couple of virtual buttons on the screen and it is just as intuitive as a controller, especially on the go. And so Forza Street, a more, I guess, laid back, more street focused, as the name does hint at, style game for Forza is a really fantastic idea, something that I hope to see more of. And the question is, what kind of game is it? Will it be free to play with in-game skins and microtransactions, or will it be a $5, $6 purchase and boom, you're good to go and you can play for the life of the game? I would say more than likely the former, where it is a free-to-play game, but of course, no official details have come out except for the fact that there has been an official leak from an official source, and that's never a good time for those that are officially working on the game because those official PR guys are going to officially beat their ass. I'm just kidding. But if you did want to check out the Forza mobile game, keep your eyes peeled because one very well could be coming pretty soon to a phone near you or even a Windows 10 device, apparently according to the official description. However, let's talk about this funny newspaper leak. Mexican newspaper prints graphic of the new Pokemon games, Sword, Shield, and Gun. That's right, Pokemon Gun. One of the funniest reactions to last week's reveal of Pokemon Sword and Shield for the Nintendo Switch was Twitter user @Sir5000's joking addition of Pokemon Gun to the lineup. The mock logo is so convincing, Mexican newspaper La Voz de Michoacán, sure, why not, ran with it. On February the 27th, the paper itself website ran a story about the announcement of Pokemon Sword and Shield. The story made no mention of the gun, of course, the fake version of the game, but the joke that, of course, does not exist, but did include a retweeted version of Sir 5000's image, which, again, is hilarious because it is, quite frankly, an image of a gun with the same kind of logo printed on it. But it was an odd choice of tweets to include. Then the print version of the paper, published on March 2nd, made an even odder choice. The story, written by Mario Plancarte, contained no mention of Pokemon Gun. The accompanying art, however, included all three logos, each corresponding to one of the game's starters. The glorious Score Bunny and Weeping Sobble are Shield and Sword respectively, while Grass Monkey Grookey looks like he's reaching for a pistol, which is hilarious. Twitter user Sin Seha brought the article to light on March the 3rd with the message, "My local newspaper, always doing research before publishing anything." Nice. According to the print article, author Plancarte, he was only responsible for the written portion of the page. The department responsible for formatting the article looks to have combined official Nintendo art of the starters, with the two real and one fake logos. It looks like the paper even scrubbed Sir 5000's watermark from the gun logo. That's a bad look, my friends. It looks like the paper, of course, is going to be redacting this in the next edition. But as for right now, if you did want to check it out, of course, that is forever going to be in print editions of that game, or that newspaper. But man, that is some funny stuff without a doubt. However, one thing that is funnier than that, Mr. X has been modded out of Resident Evil 2, of course, the remake, and in exchange, we now have Thomas the Tank Engine. That is right. If, for whatever reason, you wanted to replace Resident Evil 2's insidious Mr. X with Thomas the Tank Engine, now you can. With this never-ending smile, I'd say Thomas is nearly as creepy as Mr. X, but he's also pretty funny. It's ridiculous to see a bulky locomotive swing through doors and move towards you with a murderous intent. Thomas's theme song plays in the background too, adding to the ludicrous atmosphere. You may be surprised to know this isn't the first time Thomas the Tank Engine has invaded a popular game. Back in 2013, someone transformed a dragon from Skyrim into Thomas as well, making him a fire-breathing terror. But of course, you can find many examples of this across the internet. However, overwhelmingly, this is just absolute hilarity at its finest. But of course, the game itself is hilarious. It's fantastic. But when it comes down to it, to add mods to the game, to add Thomas the Tank Engine to the game specifically, on top of stuff like a Mr. X thong mod, on top of stuff like X Gonna Give It To You by DMX being included in the game itself via a mod. That, my friends, is the power of the modding community. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, hey, modding was a mistake. No, this is a win in the biggest and best way, without a doubt. So again, if you did want to dive in and check out the mods, you too can shoot Thomas the Tank Engine with a giant grenade flamethrower weapon in Resident Evil 2. Now, mods aside, I would highly, highly, highly recommend checking out Resident Evil 2, my favorite game of the year so far, without a doubt. And yes, my friends, that is over Apex Legends. It is a absolute masterpiece when it comes down to it. But I believe that wraps it up for today's episode of Caffeinate. If you did enjoy today's show, be sure to drop me a like down below if you are watching the YouTube version. And of course, if you are hanging out live on Twitch, I appreciate you being here. But if you ever do want to catch the podcast, it's hosted live on Twitch 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, if you did want to check it out. But of course, uploaded on YouTube, on podcast services, wherever you need it, you can find it there. But until tomorrow, you guys have a fantastic rest of the night. I'll talk to you soon, and peace.